They've even gotten into the churches. I don't know if you saw this, but this past week, one of our readers sent in a what's called a temple record. And what this is a record kept on an indexing system, like a file card system, by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS. And it details, you know how they keep their genealogies and do genealogical studies way, way back, right? Mm-hmm. Well, part of what's been going on is, as I explained, these incorporated churches have been establishing clearinghouse certificates based on baptismal certificates. Mm-hmm. And they've been buying and selling these things as being a certificate for your soul, the same way that the birth certificate was being used to manipulate your political status and to make claims against your body and DNA and everything else. So anyway, they've had this hot little black market exchange in souls, buying and selling and trading of souls. I mean, it makes the indenture scandal of the 15 and 1600s look really small by comparison. And it apparently, well, we know because we have the front and back records. The LDS wasn't content with selling the souls of its current members. They went back and baptized their ancestors and sold them too.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Non-consensual baptism. How do you like that? Oh, and by the way, we're going to sell your soul on the black market and collect money off of it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Who makes this stuff up? It's just crazy.
You couldn't make it up. You could not dream this stuff up. In your wildest dreams, I often just stop and go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it just shows that this criminality, this blatant criminality, has infested every single aspect of our lives.
And it's because of corporations. Mm-hmm. It's because corporations are basically lies. Mm-hmm. Corporations don't really exist. Mm-mm. So you're dealing with phantoms. And it's part of this entire war of the spirit.
Right.
It's part of the war of ideas and the feelings that those ideas engender, and your beliefs, what you believe in and what you don't believe in. Basically, they use corporations like they used to use nations. Mm-hmm. With a nation, you'd stick up your flag and everybody would rally around the flag, right?
Yeah.
Well, nowadays they stick up a logo, Mitsubishi. And all the Japanese go punk, 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 punk around Mitsubishi because they say, oh, that's Japanese. Oh, yeah. You see, or Ford, Mm-hmm. So they're using corporations as sort of symbolic gathering points or rallying points in the same way that they used flags in individual nations. They're using corporate logos in the same way as they used flags.
Sure.
And they're working to develop a corporate feudalism, mm-hmm. where instead of us being, pledged from birth to, owe allegiance to a monarch, instead they are aiming at that same sort of cozy little control mechanism of forcing allegiance on a brand name or a corporate logo, so that instead of having a living, breathing person who's accountable for how rotten things are, you'll have this polyglot of corporations that are faceless and nameless and just kind of working like hives of bees in the background to create problems for everybody and to plunder and pillage and be totally out of control. Mm-hmm. And this is all the fault of the Roman Catholic Church. I'm sorry, but the Roman Curia, which was allowed to continue to fester as the church, within the church, using the church as a storefront, the Roman Curia created all of these phantasms. They created all these corporations. They continue to create corporations. They created trusts. They created foundations. They've created cooperatives. They created LLCs, LCPs, all of this stuff, S Corps, C Corps, B Corps. That's all the invention of the Roman Curia. And they saw this as a means to power. And they've used it very effectively for that because they own all those corporations. They never told you that, but they own their invention. They also carry the responsibility for having created these things. And that's where they've fallen down, and that's where they've failed their trust to humanity.
Right.
They have not liquidated corporations that are engaged in unlawful activity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, when they created these things, they inherited the responsibility for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that the Holy See and the Church and the Vatican and all these guys are going, oh no, we couldn't be responsible. But they are. Under ecclesiastical law, they are. So they're trying to do this little double shimmy shuffle two-step and protect the church at the same time that they're trying to protect all of their economic and secular activities. And I don't think it's going to work out very well for them.
I don't think so. I think people are pretty awake with regard to how evil the church and the Pope and the activities that they're engaged in have become.
Well, right now, there's a tremendous amount of backlash in the church, and there should be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's well deserved. I, for one, would love to rip down those Vatican walls and expose everything in there to the light of day.
Well, I'm sure that there are millions of Catholics who feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are many Catholics who have left the church, but I would encourage them to stay and fight because it's your church and they've taken it over. And, it's much the same way with these rats coming in here as subcontractors and basically usurping upon their employers and misdirecting our lawful government, misdirecting and substituting their corporations and their operations for our lawful government. If you don't stay and hold your claim to the church, then they win.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
And there are ways in which you can unincorporate and get rid of your obligation to the Roman Curia.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs, all the organizations that are incorporated and who have unknowingly come under the thumb and forefinger of this evil need to take a good look at the charter that they created and submitted to become enfranchised in the first place. They need to look at what the mission statement and purposes of their corporation were.
Mm-hmm.
And most corporations, not all, but most corporations are set up using simple boilerplates. And essentially, a lawyer has this boilerplate in front of them, and it says, okay, you need these officers, and you need their addresses and contact information, and you need to describe their office, and you need to describe the purpose of the corporation, and blah, 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 okay? So you just go through this template process, and you punch in all the dials, and you come up with the verbiage, and then you take it into the Division of Corporations at your local territorial state of state, and they go, Congratulations, you're now a corporation and you are secured with bankruptcy protections and blah, 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 blah. And in exchange, we own you.
I think they forget to say that last little part.
That last little thing just doesn't get included. You're supposed to know that. But yeah, we now own you, and you are now regulated by us, and you come under our law, and you can't do anything but pay taxes and bow down and worship us. Okay, so all of the people out there who are listening to this and realizing for the first time that they've been basically their work, their businesses have been stolen under false pretenses and under conditions of non-disclosure, but at the same time, also as a result of you just stupidly going in and applying for a charter and becoming incorporated, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So there's some guilt on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you can do about this is to study the charter that you submitted and find those purposes within the charter that allow you to get out of the charter. Most, if not all, S Corps and C Corps have got a proviso that says that they are organized to make profit for their shareholders. Okay? So how is it going to profit your shareholders if you unincorporate? You have to be able to think that one through.
Right.
Suddenly, all of the assets belong to your shareholders, no longer belong to the state of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a huge profit to your shareholders to be actual owners of material things?
Yes, absolutely.
As opposed to a piece of paper?
Right.
And then once they own all those material things, the products and the other aspects, then they also own all of the intellectual property again, too. They own the patents. So actually, the primary purpose that you organized as an incorporated entity in the first place was to make profit. And you can still make profit by unincorporating.
Mm-hmm.
And you told them that up front, that it was your goal to make profit. So there's your loophole. There's how you can unincorporate and escape the trap.
And in the example that you're talking about, is this with the church itself?
The church can do that, but it'll be a different kind of profit.
Right.
Because most churches are organized as nonprofit 201 corporations.
Right, which they didn't need to be incorporated in the first place.
Right. Well, they can always sue for non-disclosure because they were never told any of this. And the municipal government and the territorial government, well, the municipal government was under our law, and they're in our country, right? They are required to give full disclosure.
Right. So that's two loopholes.
Oh yeah, you've got multiple loopholes for getting out of this. And you can also hold the territorial government feet first to the fire because they were supposed to protect you.
Gotcha. Yeah, that hasn't happened.
Right. Well, if you look at Article 4 of both the municipal constitution and the territorial constitution, you will see that Article 4 obligates them to protect your persons and property. And in 1790 and in 1789, when those constitutions were written, there is a specific meaning to what a person is.
Right.
Remember, they changed the meaning of person for federal purposes during the Civil War.
To be a corporation, right?
Yeah, but we are owed the 1789 and 1790 definitions of person, meaning they're supposed to be protecting us. Us.
Right.
This is the person they're supposed to be protecting. And our property interests are the person, that's the property of the person, the personal assets that are supposed to be protected by these yahoos.
The lawful person.
Right.
Now,
they're supposed to be protecting the physical person, the lawful person. They are not supposed to be protecting
the
foreign
corporation.
persons.
Yeah, the corporation either. Now, you speak a lot of the Catholic Church, but the Mormon Church is just as big of an issue. It doesn't have the papacy and that connection, but the Mormon Church itself still is a huge part of this problem.
Oh, well, they're all in it.
Yeah.
All of it. I had to leave the Lutheran Church. It's incorporated and it's doing the same thing with its baptismal certificates. And I find that, morally, intellectually, and culturally insupportable. Not to mention religiously insupportable. Can you imagine what Jesus would say to that? Can you imagine what John the Baptist would say to that? Oh yeah, I'm going to baptize you into being a thing, and then I'm going to sell you.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. And so those are the types of questions that people need to be asking themselves about their religion, and disengaging themselves from that criminality.
Right. Leave the church. Come out of Babylon. They've fallen into Babylon. And Babylon is the realm of fantasy, the incorporation. Okay, so they've made the mistake, they've taken the bait, they ate that bowl of porridge, they're now, going to have to fight their way back out of it, right? But you can help. I mean, there are many people listening tonight who are sitting on councils and boards of directors and trustee committees and everything else all around this country. And they're sitting on these boards and committees and directorates and whatnot, trying to help something good. They're trying to make a profit for their shareholders. They're trying to, bring a good product to market. They're trying to help their community and provide jobs. They're trying to provide, moral and ethical education for the young. They're trying to, spread the message of Jesus. They're trying to do something good, but by mistake, they've fallen into a system, incorporation, which is bad. And so taking arms against the fact that, okay, well, we made a mistake. Mistakes can be corrected.
Right.
And people who are sitting on those boards of directors and who are scratching their heads and thinking, let's see, I'm in charge of a campus here that is owned by, say, the Independent Baptist Church of Muskogee. Okay, and it's a nice little property. It's a nice little bit of land. It's it's got a nice church building and nice landscaping and a small church library and an education building where we hold our Sunday school and Bible camp, summer Bible school and all that. And we put a lot of money and time and effort into building this up as a facility where our congregation can meet and hold events and worship every Sunday, okay? This is typical. But we made the mistake. We incorporated the First Baptist Temple of Muskogee, all right? And now we're owned lock, stock, and barrel by the evil Roman Curia, and the territorial and municipal state-of-state organizations, and what are we going to do? Well, first and foremost, all of you need to beat feet, and if you're not working for the federal government and not dependent on unearned benefits, welfare benefits from the federal government, you need to join your state assembly. That's job one. You need to join and support your state assembly, because that's where your power and your identity should be focused. And you should support your county as a county assembly and rebuild and build up and restore every aspect of your lawful American government. Okay? But at the same time that you are building up your government to protect you and your persons and your interests, okay, you need to deal with this situation of your church being claimed as chattel by international commercial corporations that basically tricked you into incorporating and giving them your property. So you have to develop a plan to get out from underneath that status. And there are lots of ways, and we've already discussed some of them, that you can do that. But you need to start thinking about, okay, how can we unincorporate? And, different states are going to have different answers to that. But most of them are going to tell you, well, I'm sorry, you're part of this bankrupt entity, and now you're in receivership. Mm-hmm. And the international bankers are going to hold your property as chattel. Mm-hmm. And because your erstwhile employees charged your credit cards up the wazoo, you're going to have to pay off this tremendous debt, a debt that's going to, break you and break your great-grandsons. That's what they're going to tell you. And you have to have an answer ready. And you also have to be ready to bring forward your lawful government and bring forward the actual public law and stomp the hell out of them.
Yeah.
So everybody listening to this, I am trying to make this as clear as I can and to bring forward exactly what happened, what they're trying to foist off on us, and what we can do to put a big stick in their little red wagon wheels.
Right. That's what's important, is to put a stop to this ridiculousness.
And it is. It's just crime.
Yeah, absolutely. And thuggery too. But I think that that's really helpful for people, Anna, tonight, to think of that aspect, because those are very black and white. Those are very standard things that they can do. It's just, if you look at it as a business transaction and how you unwind that business transaction, I think that that's helpful, because it just removes a lot of the emotion that people get caught up in when they start, talking and thinking about their church.
Oh, well, one of the things that I learned from dealing with the Vatican is that they look at this as purely business. Mm-hmm. Has nothing to do with the Holy Savior, and has nothing to do with the Pope. Has nothing to do with the sacred functions of the church at all. This is just purely Roman Curia, Club of Rome, Urban Trust. This is just business to them. Right. And they're allowed to get away with anything they can get away with, as long as you're deceived and don't catch them at it.
Right. Yep.
So this is an example where you were deceived, okay, into incorporating, right? Mm-hmm. You were not given full disclosure.
No.
And now you're in a bind.
And you want to get out.
Right. But what is the saving grace of the Roman civil law? Fraud vitiates everything. So you were stupid, you were deceived, and on that point, the Roman civil law says, well, tough noogies, you were stupid, you deserve whatever you get. You're supposed to know this stuff. Sorry. But when you raise your hand and say, oh, not only was I deceived, I was deceived by fraud. I was deceived by misrepresentation. I was deceived because I was human trafficked without my knowledge or consent. Oh, all of a sudden something else happens. Do you remember that scene in Harry Potter where it was, I think it was the Sorcerer's Stone, one of the first ones. I only saw like the first one or two. But there was this scene where Harry and his young friends are playing a game of wizard's chess. And there were these actually, huge stone chess pieces on a life-size chessboard. And they would call out the position on the chessboard, and the piece would move into that spot. And if there was another piece already there, it would go boom, and the whole thing would go, it'd blow up. All right, well, we're in a game of wizard's chess here with the Roman civil law, which is the municipal law. Because even though it's evil and pagan, it does have those foundational premises that work like that. And fraud is one of them. If you can demonstrate that you've been defrauded, then that chess piece moves onto that square and goes wham! And it's gone, it's dead. The Roman civil law will absolutely work in a way that is very draconian, both for and against you. The Romans didn't mess around. It either was or it wasn't. And so there is that advantage in the Roman civil law that if you can demonstrate fraud, it will destroy any claim that can be made against you.
Okay, well, fantastic. I think that's going to be really helpful for people out there that have been, really struggling with what the right thing to do is in this situation.
Now, remember, that only works in municipal courts and in municipal negotiations and issues like unwinding incorporated status.
Right.
Okay. If you're dealing with the territorial government, the majority of the upper lowercase courts that you will ever see in this country at this time are territorial.
Yes.
Those are functioning under the king's equity law, which is a whole different bailiwick. So I want to just make that demarcation for people so that when you're dealing with an all capital letters entity or an all capital letters court, then the Roman civil law is what's being practiced, and that's how you can destroy a bad commercial claim in a Roman civil court.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Links to Anna's articles and resources can be found in the video description box. Thank you for subscribing, liking, and sharing. If you enjoy having Anna's latest articles made into videos, please consider making a purchase from Ed's website sacredintuitiveelements.com. Thank you.